Hi everyone. Good afternoon. It's Wednesday. I don't want there to be a day where there's not a Talking to Dragons post, so we're gonna finish this off. I'm actually gonna. This is really weird. Let me finish this. So if you don't know, I will be reading five, six, a certain number of the Book of Enchantments short stories after this. So we're not completely done with Enchanted Forest. There's more. I don't. Why is it so dark in my? It feels like it's super dark in my apartment all day. The window. I don't understand. Anyway. Actually, the remainder of this book is for Blue. Thank you, Blue. This is chapter 18, in which the King of the Dragons does some explaining. Oh, God. I swallowed hard, and for a moment I wish I were wearing my sword instead of carrying it under my arm. Every dragon from inside the enchanted forest had to be there, and quite a few from the Mountains of Morning as well. They were spread out in all directions, so I couldn't even see the ground. The forest encircled the castle at a distance, and there seemed to be something wrong about the trees. I couldn't tell what, though. And besides, I had other things to worry about right then. 200 dragons, for instance. I stepped forward and bowed carefully in all directions. One of the first things Mother taught me about dragons was that they expect a new arrival to make the first move. They always allow you one chance to convince them that you're too polite or too important to eat. I don't think I could convince 200 dragons that I was particularly important. Oh, you have no idea! Especially since I didn't believe it myself. So I was going to have to rely on being polite. I took a deep breath. And he's so polite, too. I took a deep breath. Sir and madams, I apologize most profoundly for intruding upon you in this fashion, and hope we have not inconvenienced you in any way, I said, trying not to shout while still talking loudly enough for all the dragons to hear. Nevertheless, I offer you greetings in the name of myself and my companions, and I wish you good fortune whatever endeavors are most important to you. The dragons stirred briefly, then settled back again. After a moment, an old gray-green male slid forward. We greet you and wish you well, he said. May we know your names? I bowed again, the half-bow of respect for a dragon of a great age and certain status. I thank you for your greeting, I said. I am called Daystar, and my companions are Shiara and Nightwitch. The young dragon has graciously accompanied us for part of our journey. Since some of them presumably knew the little dragon already, I didn't have to introduce it. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for the dragons' names. It's perfectly acceptable not to, and I didn't feel like standing there through 200 introductions, especially since the dragons would expect me to remember them all. Well met, Daystar, the old dragon rumbled. We've been expecting you since early this afternoon. I'm sorry if I kept you waiting, I said. We had problems with some wizards and a cave-in and a quetzal, and I didn't really know you were all here. Of course not. Telemaine only told Kazul yesterday that you were coming. Silly way to do things, making everyone gather in such a hurry. He looked at me for a minute, then added approvingly, Well, come along, no sense wasting any more time. You might as well bring the girl and the cat, too. This way. Our dragon lifted its head. What about me? It looks much smaller next to the full-grown dragons all around us, and it sounded considerably younger as well. You had better keep quiet, the other dragon said indulgently. You're in quite a bit of trouble already. I wouldn't make it worse if I were you. The dragon helped. I don't have to keep quiet, our dragon said. I found a princess even if I did decide not to keep her, and I fought a knight and bit a wizard. I can talk if I want to. The crowd of dragons shifted again, very slightly. Shiara shivered and held Nightwitch closer. I thought about wiping my hands on my tunic, but I didn't want to look too nervous. The older dragon just stood and stared at our dragon, which, I can't believe I just said stared. I've been reading Cohen too much. Which finally shook its head and settled back, watching the crowd below us with a sulky expression. The old dragon smiled slyly. What do you think? He asked the crowd of dragons behind him. All of the dragons roared at once. I couldn't tell what they were saying, or even if they were saying anything, but the old dragon nodded again, and looked at the little dragon. You'll get your wish then. Well, don't just stand there. I nodded and stepped forward as the old dragon turned. Shiara followed behind me, very closely, and our dragon came behind her. Where are we going? Shiara whispered back to me. The old dragon looked back over his shoulder, and his eyes glinted with amusement. You're going to see Kazul. Oh, Shiara said. We stepped down from the little hill, and there was a loud clattering and rumbling as the dragons moved out of our way. I stopped short in shock. The ground around the hill was dry, and brown, and bare. It looked even worse to me than it would have normally because I'd spent several days looking at the rich green moss in the enchanted forest, and the contrast was striking. Then I remembered that we were still in the enchanted forest, and I started being worried as well as shocked. I knew from experience how fast the moss grew and how hard it was to clear off even a small strip of ground. I didn't like to think about what had stripped the moss from the area around the castle. Shiara poked me and I moved forward again. Fortunately, the dragon ahead of us hadn't noticed my pause. Few of the ones at the edge of the crowd had, but they seemed more amused than anything. I know why. I walked a little faster, trying to ignore the large shapes on either side of me. With 200 dragons around, I could waste a lot of time worrying if I wasn't careful. The old dragon led us toward the castle. As we got closer, I could see there were two shimmerings in the air around the castle, one a few feet inside the other. The outer one looked like a shifting green and silver veil, very thin and transparent. The inner one seemed to be a pale golden glow, but I couldn't be sure because the one on the outside kept shifting around, interfering with my seeing the inner one clearly. After a few minutes, I gave up on trying to look at the shimmerings and tried to look through them instead. The shimmerings didn't get in the way at all, so I could see quite a bit of the castle. There was no wall around it, only the shimmerings and water-filled moat just inside them. The castle itself was a wonderful, rambling-looking place, with 6 towers of various sizes, large square windows, and 4 balconies. I could see several stairways running up to oddly shaped towers or around the outsides of towers, and a lot of walls that seemed to be there just to confuse people. I was so ousy studying the castle and the shimmerings that I almost didn't notice when the old dragon stopped. I was lucky not to step on its tail. We were about halfway around the castle, and there seemed to be fewer dragons around. I was trying to guess which one was Kazul when the old dragon who'd been leading us stepped a little to one side and bobbed his head respectfully. King Kazul, these are the travelers who wish to see you. That one's Daystar, the other one's Shiara. The cat is Night Witch. Right away I bowed very deeply, and so did Shiara. I was relieved. I hadn't been completely sure Shiara would do any of the things I'd suggested. As I straightened up, I got my first look at Kazul. Even lying on the ground, she looked large for a dragon. Her scales were just beginning to turn gray around the edges, which surprised me. I had expected someone older. Her eyes were hypnotic, green-gold ovals. She was the most dangerous-looking dragon I'd ever seen. Kazul smiled broadly. Dragons have a lot of teeth. So, she said, you are the people Telemaine sent through the caves of Chance, and you have the sword of the sleeping king. Yes, your majesty, I said. I took the sword out from under my arm and held it up so she could see it better. Mother gave it to me a few days ago, and I was told you would want to know about it. Ah. As she looked at the sword, Kazul's eyes glowed. Literally. The light from them was a little like firelight, except it didn't flicker. After a minute, she transferred her gaze to me. And you got it here safely. Well done, Cimmerian's son. Thank you, your majesty, I said. You know my mother? Mother. Sorry. I've been reading all day. Words don't mean anything to me anymore. Ah. Kazul smiled again. Cimmerian was the best princess I ever had. Shiara choked and my jaw dropped. The little dragon said, so that's how she knew dragon magic, in a pleased tone. I closed my mouth and swallowed hard and bowed to Kazul. Excuse me, your majesty, I was, startled. Mother is a princess? She certainly was once, Kazul said. She looked at the sword again. I'm glad she managed to keep it safe. We didn't have a lot of choice at the time, but it's still worrying to have to take a risk like that. I wasn't certain what to say. Kazul didn't seem to be talking to me, but it isn't a good idea to ignore a dragon. So, just to be safe, I bowed again. Kazul looked up from the sword. You needn't be quite so formal. I have a lot to tell you, and the conversation will go faster if you're not so stiff. Before I could reply, Kazul turned toward the old dragon, who was still standing beside me. It will be tomorrow morning. Let everyone know. Oh my god! The old dragon nodded and left. Kazul looked back at us. Come with me. She started to rise. What about me? The little dragon demanded. Kazul sighed. Yes, you may come too. She stood, which made her look twice as big as she had before, and started walking. Shiara and I looked at each other, and then followed. By this time the sun was completely down, but there was still enough light in the sky to see where we were going. Kazul led us a little farther around the castle, then turned away from it. As we walked along, the other dragons slid out of the way for Kazul and I, and bowed their heads respectfully. Then Shiara and I walked by and bowed respectfully to the dragons. Kept us too busy to see much of where we were going. Kazul led us to what looked like a jumbled pile of rocks a little away from the castle. There was a dark opening at one side of the pile, and Kazul went right in. Shiara and the little dragon and Night Witch and I followed. It was very dark inside, almost as black as the caves of Chance. I stopped immediately, since I didn't want to step on Kazul's tail in the dark or run into her accidentally. Shiara bumped into me, squeezing Night Witch between us. Night Witch said, meow, in a complaining tone, and Kazul's voice came out of the darkness. I suppose you human people need some light. Only if it won't be inconvenient, I said. Not at all, Kazul replied, and added about 5 hissing words. Silvery light sprang up all around us. I squinted, and then I blinked. The inside of the pile of rocks looked a lot like a cave. I looked for the source of light and realized that the light was coming from the rocks. That shook me. Dragons don't usually do magic casually. In particular, the King of the Dragons wouldn't normally work a spell just for a visitor's convenience. I looked at Kazul, wondering exactly what was going on. You're not just a visitor, you have no idea! How is he going to react to knowing... Ugh! Sit down, said Kazul, nodding toward a row of rocks. We did. The little dragon sat down by the entrance, looking half sulky and half defiant. Kazul ignored it. I think you had better tell me your story first, she said, looking at me intently. Start at the beginning, when Simrine gave you the sword. I'm sorry, I said, I'll start with the sword if you want me to, but I think the beginning is the wizard. Wizard? His name's Antorel, and he came to our cottage the day before Mother gave me the sword. Mother melted him. Oh, him. 'Cause him. Antorel is just him. Oh, God. Kazul shook her head. Sounds like he hasn't learned anything since the last time he tangled with Simrine. Yes, start with him by all means. So I told Kazul everything that had happened to me since Antorel had walked up to our cottage and knocked the door in. It took a long time, especially the part after Shiar and I met the little dragon, because then the dragon kept adding things. Finally, Kazul told it to either be quiet or go away. It looked terribly offended, but it quit talking. Kazul didn't ask any questions at all. Once, when I mentioned finding the key in the Caves of Chance, she made a noise that sounded like an astonished snort, but she apologized for interrupting and told me to go on. I did, once I got over the shock of having the King of Dragons apologize to me. Oh my God. I'm so This is too much. When I finished, there was silence for a minute or two. Then Kazul stirred. So, you've accomplished a great deal in a short time, Daystar. It doesn't seem like much. It doesn't seem like much to me, I said. A great deal, Kazul repeated. She sounded as if she were talking to herself. Shiara shifted restlessly. Are you going to explain about Daystar's sword? Shiara, I said, horrified. Nobody talks to the King of the Dragons in that tone of voice. Except Shiara. No, said Kazul. Or at least, I'm not going to tell you as much as you want to know. The Society of Wizards has more than 100 spells hunting for that sword right now, and all of them depend on finding someone who knows what he's carrying. Fortunately, Wizards' magic can't detect the sword itself. If Daystar finds out too much about that sword, it will be up to our wings and wizards in no time. I don't want that to happen yet. I don't like wizards, the little dragon said suddenly. They make me sneeze. Kazul's head turned, and she eyed the little dragon for a minute. I think it is time you made yourself useful, she said at last. Go find Marchak and tell him to bring us dinner. Then go back to your teacher and apologize for running off, and after that you can start getting ready for tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? The little dragon said suspiciously. We have a war, Kazul said, which you might live through if you're ready for it. So go. Yes, ma'am. The little dragon disappeared out the door of the cave. Kazul looked after it for a minute, then shook her head. That is undoubtedly the most irritating grandchild I have. Who are you going to be? Grandchild, said Shiara. Well, yes, of course. Kazul looked mildly surprised. It's an annoying youngster, but precocious children frequently are. I'm hoping it will grow out of it. Oh. Shiara stared out the entrance thoughtfully. I enjoyed its company most of the time, I said honestly. I'm glad, Kazul said. After another minute, I went on. If you wouldn't mind telling us, I'm sort of curious about whom you expect to be fighting tomorrow. I was also wondering whether Kazul thought Shiara and I were going to be included in this. I wasn't particularly anxious to get involved in a war between dragons. Kazul smiled. I had the feeling she knew what I was thinking. Wizards, she said. There will be a few elves, of course, and maybe some ogres and trolls. But mostly we'll be fighting wizards. Oh, of course. I was even less interested in getting involved in a war between dragons and wizards. Dragons alone might overthink or overlook Shiara Night Witch in me, but wizards certainly wouldn't. I'm afraid you already are involved, Kazul said. Because of the sword? Shiara asked, while I tried to remember whether I'd said anything out loud about not wanting to get involved. Yes, said Kazul. The sword and other things. It's a long story. I hope you're comfortable. We both nodded, and Kazul smiled again. Well then, there are two types of magic in the world, the kind you're born with and the kind you get from something else. Dragons, Kazul looked smug, elves, unicorns, and fire witches are born with magic. Ordinary witches and magicians get their magic from objects, or from rituals involving things that have magic, which works quite well and doesn't upset things. Okay, I gotta make another video since I'm close to 15 minutes.